Hello and welcome back to 365 Days with mxmtoon. I'm Maia, a singer, songwriter, videomaker, Oakland native, and occasional diarist. I'm also a huge history nerd. I love untold stories, gross facts, hidden secrets, and anything weird, dark, and funky from the past. Each day, I'm going to share some of my favorite deep cuts with you, so let's dig into today's stories.
It's 365 with mxmtoon. New facts every day, so don't leave too soon. I'm gonna teach you stuff, no it won't be tough. Gonna go a year till you've had enough. It's 365 mxmtoon.
Today, in 1960, the Anne Frank House opened in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. The house, located in Amsterdam's city center, was once the hiding spot for Anne Frank, a Jewish teenager who lived in a secret annex with her family for 2 years before she was taken to a Nazi concentration camp. Anne died in the camp, but her memories of her time in hiding lived on in her diary, which her father published after her death. In the years since, Anne Frank's story has been an iconic depiction of the pain and suffering Nazis inflicted upon European Jews and their other victims, and the Anne Frank House functions as a museum that helps tell visitors more about Anne and her life in the Nazi-occupied Netherlands. But let's back up. Anne Frank was born in Frankfurt, Germany on June 12, 1929. Her parents were Edith and Otto Frank, both German Jews. She had an older sister, Margot. Not long after Anne was born, in 1933, Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany. Hitler quickly began consolidating power, transforming Germany's shaky democracy into a true dictatorship. He quickly began enacting laws taking rights away from German Jews. That same year, Otto, a businessman, moved to Amsterdam to start a new company. Anne and her sister lived with their grandparents for a year and moved to Amsterdam in 1934. Anne's early childhood was cheerful and happy, but in Germany, Hitler continued to gain power and strip German Jews of their rights. His army and police took Jews and members of other groups Hitler decided were not worthy of survival from their homes and put them in ghettos and concentration camps, where many were murdered. The Nazis began invading other European countries, notably Poland in 1939, instigating the Second World War. On November of 1940, Nazis invaded the Netherlands. They began enacting the same kinds of anti-Jewish laws that were being put in place all over Europe by them. Otto tried to get papers so his family could emigrate to the United States, but his visa application was never processed. The Franks were trapped in Nazi-occupied Amsterdam. In June 1942, Anne got a diary as a gift. She began writing in it, at first documenting some of the restrictions placed on her and other Jews in Amsterdam. A few weeks later, her sister Margot got a notice from the Central Office for Jewish Immigration to go to a work camp. Jews who went to work camps did not come back. The Franks took action. On July 6, 1942, the Frank family moved into the secret annex. It was actually an attic apartment located behind the offices for Otto's company. You could access the apartment behind a bookcase, which pulled out. There were a few small rooms for the hiders. Along with the Franks, the secret annex served as a hiding spot for the Jewish von Pels family and Fritz Pfeiffer, a Jewish dentist. Anne documented her time in hiding, her frustrations with the other families in the small attic, and her friendships with the helpers, some of Otto's employees, who knew the families were hiding in the secret annex and brought them food, reading materials, and news of the outside world. Anne also developed a short romance with Peter von Pels, who was 16 at the start of their confinement. Anne wrote about being lonely and not being able to go outside, about arguments she had with her own family members, and about the war and the human capacity for kindness as well as cruelty. The families stayed hidden until August 4th, 1944, when they were discovered by Nazi police. It is believed someone tipped them off, though to this day, historians do not know who did it. The Franks were sent to Auschwitz, a death camp in Poland. Margot and Anne were not there long, though, and were transferred to Bergen-Belsen, a concentration camp in northern Germany. They both contracted typhus fever not long after they arrived and died in February 1945, only just over a month before the camp was liberated by Allied forces. Anne was only 15 years old when she died. Anne's mother died at Auschwitz, but Otto survived. When he returned to Amsterdam after the war, one of the secret annex helpers gave him Anne's diaries. He put them together into a manuscript and got the diary published in Amsterdam in 1947. Though it took longer for U.S. publishers to accept the material, in 1952 they published Anne Frank's diary, naming it The Diary of a Young Girl. In the years since, Anne Frank's diary has been emblematic of the individual suffering incurred during the Holocaust. Many schools require students to read it, to learn more about the horrors of the time, and to empathize with Anne. Note that some of Anne Frank's diary was edited. Otto didn't publish some of the personal stuff Anne wrote, like about getting her period, sex, and fights she got into with her mother. In 2001, those missing pages were added back in. The Anne Frank house has preserved the secret annex, which still displays some personal items left behind by the Franks and the other inhabitants of the attic, and tells Anne's story, so you can get a small sense of what it was like to live in such a tiny, frightening space for so many months. And now let's talk about music. Today, in 2005, Fall Out Boy released their second studio album, From Under the Cork Tree. At the time, Fall Out Boy was developing a cult following in the pop-punk emo scene, thanks to their first album, Take This to Your Grave. But they hadn't hit the mainstream yet. From Under the Cork Tree changed things. The album debuted at number 9 on the album charts, the first Fall Out Boy album to crack the top 10. The album's single, Sugar We're Going Down, was a major hit, netting Fall Out Boy appearances on MTV and spots on pop radio stations' top 10 lists. In fact, From Under the Cork Tree was Fall Out Boy's breakthrough album, taking them from the alternative scene to the mainstream. So happy birthday, From Under the Cork Tree. And now for our final segment of the day, I'm going to be going into my own photo archives to see what I was up to on a May 3rd in my life. On May 3rd, 2019, I went to YouTube's Creator Space in LA, which is like, I feel like it was a really big deal for me because I used to watch a lot of YouTube growing up, and like whenever a YouTuber would go to like the YouTube studio space in Hollywood, I guess like LA is, I don't know if it's Hollywood, I don't even know the actual area. It's like a very cool space. It's basically just like a series of buildings that are solely designed for the purpose of people going there and making content. And I went to shoot all of the visualizers that I do for like my music, but I did it there for the Masquerades visualizers, which we did in front of a green screen. We ended up animating a bunch of things in the background to fit each song and each track. But yeah, I spent the entire day there. I remember I brought a suitcase filled with shirts just so I could swap through them. I've since developed my fashion style a little bit more, although I do tend to wear the same shirt every single day. And it was really fun. And I think that was one of my first kind of big shoot days that I've done, because I didn't really do music videos at that point. I think the first music video I ever did was I Feel Like Chet, and that was kind of similar to this vibe, but video shoots were still pretty new to me at that point in 2019. So yeah, baby Maia was doing little content capture, which is kind of cool. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Go ahead and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and you can follow along at 365 Days mxmtoon on your preferred social media platforms.
It's 365 with mxmtoon. New facts every day, so don't leave too soon. I'm gonna teach you stuff, no it won't be tough. Gonna go a year till you've had enough. It's 365